lovelies, I'm so happy you joined me for my third podcast, The Gods. See, I did it in exactly the same way I did last time. I'm going to go straight into it because if you still don't know who I am, then that's a disgrace on your part. You should have a good memory and know who I am. Dramatic hair flip. Anywho, as I mentioned in my last podcast, there are 6 main Olympians: Zeus, Hera, Hestia, Poseidon, Hades and Demeter. Their parents are Kronos and Rhea. As I mentioned in my last one as well, Kronos and Rhea are siblings. Couldn't even think of it. Kronos decided that he wanted to have children with not any sister of his, even though that's a bit weird myself, but he decided he wanted to have children with Rhea, who, as I mentioned in my last one, was the titaness of motherhood. Makes sense, I suppose, but then again, why with your sister? Beats me, you're asking the same questions I am. Anyway, they had 6 children. There are lots of different versions that talk about the birth order of the children, but they all point to the same conclusion in where Hestia was the oldest and Zeus was the youngest. So we're gonna go Hestia, Hera, Demeter, Hades, Poseidon and Zeus. As each child was born, Rhea would hand it to Kronos and go, "Here, my husband, here is your newborn." When he first held Hestia, he went, "Aw, beautiful," and then swallowed her whole, much to Rhea's dismay. Stupidly, I don't know why, she continued to then have 4 other children with him, in which he ate every single one. She was finally sick of it, and when she found she was expecting her 6th, she decided to pull a trick. After she'd given birth to Zeus, Rhea left him under the care of Almathea, who was essentially a foster mother. A lot of sources say she was a goat, but I don't understand how a goat could be a foster mother. After Rhea had given birth to Zeus on the quiet island of Crete, far away from Kronos, she left him under the care of Almathea, a goat. Yeah, I know how it sounds, but Almathea offered Zeus her udder, which helped provide him milk and nourishment, which kept him strong. Rhea then went back to Kronos with a rock wrapped in a blanket and said, "Here is your child." So he swallowed the rock. Rhea, being an incredible actress, started shrieking and rolling around on the floor going, "You've eaten my 6th child, I'm not having children with you anymore, no!" And they didn't. Kronos continued his tyranny for years and years and years and years and years. What he didn't know, however, is his 5 previously eaten children, Hera, Hestia, Poseidon, Hades and Demeter, were continuing to grow in his stomach. Not in size, but in age, because obviously they're gods and restricted themselves to a certain size. But they continued to grow as normal people in his stomach. Zeus continued to train on the island of Crete, far away from his father, never letting him know who he was so he could come in at the last minute and pull a Kronos. And by that I mean kill him. Years pass and Zeus eventually comes back to the island and under the guise of, I suppose, the modern equivalent of a waiter. When he thought he was ready, Zeus left Crete and went to the island where his mother, father and presumably digested siblings were. He came basically, I suppose you could say he came under the guise of the modern equivalent of a waiter. He'd previously put some kind of potion, no one knows actually what potion, but it obviously wasn't very nice, in his father's wine and gave it to him. And Kronos was like, another, and downed all the wine. What he didn't know is this then caused him to throw up all of his siblings, Hera, Hestia, Poseidon, Hades and Demeter. Upon leaving their father's stomach, they came into fully grown adults-ish, as gods do. Zeus then led his siblings into battle that raged on for years and years and years and years against the Titans. Eventually they won against the Titans. Zeus, Poseidon and Hades cut up Kronos and threw him all across the world. Kronos' remains went down to Tartarus and he was never seen again. That was the beginning of the Big 6. And no one's really sure how they ended up with the domains they ended up, but maybe they kind of did a whoever pulls the short straw gets the death world kind of thing. So obviously Hades pulled the short straw and is god of the underworld, Poseidon the sea and Zeus the sky. I suppose you can say the children of the Big 6 were generation 4, kind of? I'm not really sure. They were all crowned, most of them were all crowned Olympians, so I don't know. Zeus then took Hera's hand and made him queen of the gods, with him being king of the gods, and they had children. Zeus and Hera had 4 children together. Ares, Enyo, Hebe, and Eris. If the name Ares rings a bell, that's because he's the god of war. He's also an Olympian. Zeus then had 6 more children, out of wedlock, with Athena with Metis, Hermes with Maia, Dionysus with Semele, Perseus with Danae, and to the twins Artemis and Apollo with Leto. Leto's classed as a minor titan, so I'll be going more into her later on. Rather unfairly on her part, Hera decided that she didn't like she was carrying Zeus's children, even though it wasn't her fault. Zeus was known to rather hit first and ask questions later, if you get what I mean. So she cursed Leto to never be on land, until eventually she found an island and was barred there for life. She could never leave the island. Sucks a bit. Zeus then had a daughter with Demeter, his sister, incestuous, who was Persephone. I'm sure you remember her. You know, goddess of spring, goddess of the harvest. If you don't know her by that, then you'll know her as Hades' wife. I knew the penny would drop on that one. But we'll move on to Poseidon. He had like nearly as many kids as Zeus, if not more. But all of his were kind of sea-based, so they didn't really wreak havoc on land. In 2 main ones that he fathered was Charybdis, a monster, and Triton. You must know Triton. If you've seen The Little Mermaid, you'll know who I'm talking about. Hestia remained forever a virgin and never had any children, which, no, some people do. No matter how many times her siblings tried to make an advance on her, she would turn around and go, no, no children coming from me. Fair dues, you know, fair dues. Girl power. Hera, interestingly, she mothered a son on her own with no man, Hephaestus. Although she did kind of throw him off Olympus because he was ugly. But, you know, if we're going to be giving out Mother of the Year awards, none of them really match up at the minute, except Rhea. Hades ended up having, well, Hades, after kidnapping and manipulating Persephone into marrying him, may have actually had 2 children of their own, though no sources confirm or deny. No one can officially say whether or not he had children with her. He did have children. A lot of monsters and bad people. But there are speculations that he was very loyal to Persephone and would not have had a child without her. Do you remember, in my last one, I mentioned that Kronos threw his dad's testicles into the sea, which would spawn a god? Yeah. They're not... I mean, if you rack your brain, you'll realise I haven't mentioned one god. Or goddess. Nothing coming to mind? How about the goddess of love? No, not Venus. Well, yeah, but her Greek equivalent, Aphrodite. Ah, see, I knew you'd know her with that. Aphrodite was born from the sea foam, from Uranus's testicles, or rather the blood they produced when they were cut off. I suppose you can technically say that Aphrodite is Zeus's aunt. But who knows, he had kids with her in the end anyway, so, you know, it's all kind of one great big tangle of wires. Interestingly though, I'm sure you'll all know there's a centaur called Chiron. Yeah, he trains all the heroes. He is Kronos' son. No one knows how you could father a half-horse, half-human, but some things are better left not answered. Ugh, nasty. Now we will go into what each god was. Like, I know you know Zeus as the god of the sky and the king, but he was also the god of thunder and lightning, interestingly. So whenever you're in a plane and you feel turbulence, just say, Zeus, stop having a temper tantrum, please, and let me get to my luxurious foreign holiday in peace, if that's your cup of tea. He'll probably have another mood, but don't let you go safely because you asked him. And Poseidon, obviously, is the god of the sea, and I would be very surprised if you didn't know that. But he's also the god of earthquakes, interestingly. So whenever you feel an earthquake, just go, please, please, stop the earthquake, stop the earthquake. You probably won't, but at least you've done your job. Hades is the god of the underworld, riches and metals. Ares, my least favourite, is the god of murder, cannibals, violence and war. Why you choose those, I don't know. Aphrodite is the goddess of love and lust and beauty. Hermes, who I mentioned earlier, is the god of pretty much everything. He's the god of thievery, hospitality, merchants, travel, trade, everything, pretty much. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt and wild animals. She also helped her mother Leto have her brother, which made her the goddess of childbirth. Artemis also joined Hestia in never having children. She believed men would hold her back, so she decided not to. You go, girl. And then we got Dionysus. He's the god of vines, grapes, and wine. Glug glug, if you get what I mean. Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths and craftsmen, and also fire and volcanoes. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and battle strategies. Apollo is the god of music and prophecy, oracles, sun, and poetry. He's also the god of healing and the plague. I don't know how you get those two together, but you know, you are what you are. Hera's a lot like her mum in terms of powers. While her mum was the titaness of motherhood and generations, Hera is the titaness of childbirth and women and marriage. So obviously her marriage to Zeus is very sacred to her, and when he has a child out of wedlock, she decides to take it out on the child and not him. Proves my point about an evil stepmother, as I mentioned a few episodes ago. We've got Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and harvest. Demeter's daughter Persephone, as I mentioned earlier, married Hades and potentially had a few children with him. Demeter was... Do you know why the seasons exist? It's because of Demeter. When Hades first kidnapped Persephone, Demeter went into a complete meltdown. Understandably so, because I'd be exactly the same if my daughter got kidnapped. She refused to let any crops grow, the harvest stopped, the winds picked up, the weather got worse, and she became a depressed, emotional wreck. Zeus convinced Hades to let Persephone up for 6 months out of the 12, which is spring and summer. Well, on a guess. Autumn and winter is when... Think of it like this. You got autumn, which is when Persephone's beginning to go back down to the underworld, and you got winter when she's in the underworld. That's when Demeter's at her saddest. And you got spring, which is when Persephone's getting ready to come back up to see her mum, and you got summer, when she's out of the underworld and on the world with her mum. And it continues like that every year. And finally, we have Hestia, the least known Olympian. She's the goddess of home, family, and the fire. It's a bit sad, really. She, along with Hera, Apollo, Athena, Hephaestus, Artemis, Hermes, Aphrodite, Ares, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus, was one of the 12 Olympians who sat on the thrones. But Zeus decided to make his son, Dionysus, a god. This led to absolute uproar. There had to be 6 girls and 6 men on the thrones. No one would give up their spot for Dionysus, so it was going to be an uneven balance. It would be 13 gods, and that couldn't happen. So Hestia stuck her hand up and went, I'm not really bothered about being an Olympian anyway. You know, he can have my throne. I'll just tend to the fire in the corner. And so she did. Luckily, though, otherwise there probably would have been a war. That's basically their equivalent of a family barbecue. Before I wrap this up, I just thought I'd give you a bit of a Roman mythology on this. I know this is a Greek mythology podcast, but it is really interesting. You know the solar system? All the planets up there, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, etc. They're actually also the Greek gods' Roman equivalent. So Zeus is Jupiter, Poseidon's Neptune, Hades is Pluto, Ares Mars, Aphrodite Venus, and Hermes Mercury. Obviously, I know there's more planets out there than that, but the other Roman equivalents aren't planets, so there's no point in mentioning them. I hope this wasn't too confusing for anybody listening. Please join me for my next one, where we will be talking about, drumroll please, the minors. No, I don't mean people under 18. I mean the minor gods and the minor titans. See you then.